This mayor's not taking any infiltration into his school system, and he's going to tell you why tonight. Mayor Joe Polisena is my guest, the good mayor of Johnston. Joe doesn't mince words these days. Actually, I don't think he ever has, to be honest with you. He's not happy with this dynamic of people sneaking into his school system. How it happens and what he wants to do about it are an interesting conversation, don't you think? And we'll have him tonight on My State of Mind. Thank you for tuning in, weeknights 7:30 and 11:30 on MyRI TV, and of course now on Fox Providence at midnight. Let's go to the rundown and think about some of the things that are on my mind, which might cause some things to be on your mind. And then you kick back on your state of mind. Pope Francis is in the country. The slang would be that he's in the house. He was at the White House. The headline on this shows that he gets political. All the media, all excited. He's all getting political and stuff. CBS has a follow-up from today.
A joyous crowd welcomed Pope Francis to the White House this morning during his first official visit to the U.S. Speaking in English, the Argentinian-born Francis said he was grateful for the warm reception. The Pope's remarks went beyond pleasantries to address America's improving relations with Cuba, but the centerpiece of his speech was dedicated to climate change.
Mr. President, I find it encouraging that you are proposing an initiative for reducing air pollution.
President Obama said Pope Francis set a profound moral example.
You shake our conscience from slumber.
All right, Mr. President, kind words for the Pope. Let me say this. If you think that's political, wait till you see what he does tomorrow morning in front of a joint session of Congress. Now, you know, climate change and global warming and all that kind of stuff is controversial. The Pope has been on this. He's got his reasons for it. I care not to debate it right now. But I'm looking for the Pope to step up and talk about things like life, because that is the core teaching. In addition to the Eucharist, it is the core teaching of the Catholic Church. And I would imagine he's got some things to say about a Congress that's not been so good on life these days. You know, somebody asked me today, why is this visit from the Pope so important? I asked that question on the radio on WPRO weekdays noon to 3 and got some interesting answers. Perhaps you could tell me on your state of mind, a number that will show you coming up. Of course, there's all sorts of ways to feed back to this TV show as well. Stay tuned for tomorrow. It's going to be a dandy. Coming back home. Yep, we said War Sox, W-A-R-S-O-X, last week when 10 days ago, when Scott Avedisian, the mayor of Warwick, said, hey, what about the Paw Sox coming this way? Now, it looks like a northern interest. The headline at WPRI.com stemming from stories in the Worcester Telegram today. Worcester open relocating Paw Sox to the Bay State. Yeah, well, listen, they've always been open to the idea, but now if they perceive that Rhode Island is a lost negotiation, they'll play a little rope-a-dope, and they're pretty cocky about it too, to be honest with you. One of the counselors who's head of the finance committee, who seemed like a pretty sharp guy when he listened to his whole conversation on WPRO radio this morning with Gene Valicente on the WPRO Morning News, but he started with a little bit of unsolicited advice that I didn't find too pleasing.
Your problem is that you guys have a shilling hangover, and you gotta take some Alka-Seltzer and make a real assessment if you really want them.
You know what? We don't have a shilling hangover. We have a devastating $100 million deficit and a cloud hanging over us that causes us not to trust government. We don't care about Kurt Schilling. We care about trusting government. The problem right now with Rhode Islanders is that there's no faith and trust in government, and thus public-private finance projects like the stadium end up blowing in smoke because the transparency is not there and the trust is gone. Mr. Counselor, thank you for your advice. In the meantime, I would think that, well, this thing is becoming a multi-state, multi-location challenge for the Paw Sox. There's no doubt they want to leave Pawtucket. They'll be shopping. Springfield will be the next one to pop up and say, oh yeah, us too. And speaking of the Paw Sox, the Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, spoke to our own Steve Klampkin on WPRO radio yesterday about the Paw Sox. And we played this audio piece on the radio today. Folks could not believe what they heard. Here's what the speaker said.
I still think the original proposal was a good business model. It was going to generate positive cash flow for the state of Rhode Island and for the Paw Sox. Whenever you can do that, that's a win. It would have been a great ballpark that a lot of people talk to. It would have been a catalyst for the city of Providence. A lot of good things would have happened there.
Well, what in God's name could he possibly be talking about? The public went nuts over this. $120 million ask by the Paw Sox from the state over 30 years at $4 million a year to finance their $80 million stadium. Jessica, Kevin, the staff of Dan York State of Mind, and I could go to a local bank and say, we'd like to name the stadium the Jessica, Kevin, Dan Stadium because we have $120 million coming from the state guaranteed. Can you give us 80 to build it? And Jessica, Kevin, and Dan would have gotten a loan approval. That's how bad and stinky the deal was. So we talked about it a lot on the radio today, and all of a sudden the spokesman for the speaker decided to say, we got to clarify this, and sent a statement to WPRO News. Listen to this. I clearly misspoke when talking with WPRO yesterday regarding the Providence Stadium. I did not mean to say that the original proposal was a good one, because it was not. What I meant to say was the proposal at the original site with the terms that we were reworking was a good one. Well, then why didn't you explain it to us, Mr. Speaker? You should have heard the whole conversation. He's like the kingmaker who wanted to do the deal behind the scenes, who couldn't get the deal done, who's taking his ball and bat and going home. If he had a deal, that's like saying, remember the, you want to see my bird? Oh, you can't see my bird. We had a deal, but I can't show it to you. And he thinks he's leading this state as a speaker? Where's the transparency? Show us the deal that was so good that we missed. Maybe we'll rethink it. And worse, the speaker also had some thoughts on 38 Studios and the hearings and all of that. And listen to this.
You have to learn from your past mistakes, but you have to move forward. And we have some people that want to stay relevant by continuing to talk about it. I don't want to forget about it. I want to learn from it. I want everybody to study every document and every deposition that comes forth. And if it doesn't tell the whole story, I'll figure out a way to tell the whole story, because we're going to learn what happens. The public has an absolute right to know that.
Now, the hearings I'm talking about are the ones that I've been calling for, and so many of them calling for, that never happened. I mean, real hearings with subpoena power, putting people under oath, getting to the bottom of what happened in 2010, while he, by the way, was a member of the leadership. Now, he was not deposed. He told WPRO he was not deposed in the civil litigation between the state and the defendants, and all that paperwork is being coughed up soon, and you'll be able to see who said what. We know that the Speaker of the House that's in jail took the fifth. We know the Speaker of the House before him did give a deposition, so did Governor Kacheri and all of that. But he's all about this idea that we can't go backwards, we got to go forwards. Unless we got to go backwards, and if we go backwards and we look at the documents and they don't tell us another story, okay, I'll find out a way to tell everybody what happened. But I'm not going to have hearings, and I'm not going to try to stay relevant by keeping the story and the conversation, because we got to move forward. Holy mackerel. It's really not that hard. You get the documents from the civil litigation. You schedule hearings with subpoena power. You use government to investigate government like they do in Washington when there's scandal. You purge it. You prosecute if necessary. You put an executive summary end to it, and you call it a day. Then people can put it behind them. Not until, Mr. Speaker, who's confused about what deal he's talking about anyway. We're in a real leadership vacuum void right now, and you should be panicking. I know I am. Then again, we got people who are just so off-putting, they don't really, I don't know, they go other places. Did you read this today? It's funny because I was reading the stories about China. I'm thinking, oh, Bryant University's got another mission to China. Good, we got to get Ron Makeley on, the president, because Bryant does good work in China. He's been working with China for 20 years. URI's been working with China, but now this guy's going to China. You know him as the mayor of Providence. There are a few things going on in the city right now. You know, firefighter arbitration contract problem, a whole bunch of other challenges that he has, and he went to China. Like on the taxpayer dime, I guess, or whatever, with his staff. He went to China. It's like that commercial, he went to Jared. He went to Jared. He went to China. I don't even know why he's going to China. You know why he's going to China? Maybe he should stay in China. Your state of mind is important to us. Why is he in China? Tell me why the Pope visit's so important. 228-1886. Tell me why Elorza went to China. Tell me that you want to see the deal from Mattiello that he's hiding and won't show us. Tell me something, will you? Email me, Facebook post, tweet. Here's a tweet that was of interest. Erica writes, regarding schools challenges, the kind of thing we're going to talk about with Mayor Polisena coming up. The tragedy lies in families being zoned to such bad schools they try to escape them. Well, when they try to escape Alcatraz and head to Johnston, they're not going to be met with any welcome mat, that's for sure. Next. Let's see if there's a line item in the Johnston budget to go to China. I don't know. They got to get some more money there. When they're doing it this way, they're going to start whacking people for trying to sneak into their school. Here's the headline. Yes. You cause a little ruckus. Where's your welcome mat? I thought you were a nice guy, for crying out loud. What's the matter with you?
Well, quite frankly, I'm a very nice guy, and we welcome students who are legally enrolled in our school system. The reason why we placed this ordinance in is because we found out. I'll give you an example.
Wait a second, before you get all serious on me.
Sure.
You have any budget for international travel in Johnston as the mayor of that fair town?
I don't have enough money to go to Oneyville. So, which I love their wieners. It's the best. It's a great place. But I don't have enough money to go to Oneyville. So
proceed. You have before you get into what happened.
Well, we felt.
Just tell us what happened.
Yeah, we felt that there were several people. I'll give you an example. Let's say I have the homestead. I live at number 1 Atwood Avenue. So let's say I have a sister, and she says, "Listen, I live at City X. She lives at City X. I don't want to say cities and towns, but I got to get my kids out of the school system. You need to give me a lease." So as Joseph Polisena living at 1 Atwood Avenue, I'm getting the homestead there. It's a single-family home.
The homestead property tax reduction.
Right. It gives you a 20% tax reduction in your home. So on your taxes. So if your house is worth $200,000, obviously you're only taxed on $160,000.
Right. And who qualifies for homestead, by the way?
Any homeowner who owns the house, who proves that they own the house, and it's for owner occupied.
Right.
And if you have a 2-family, you get 50% of the homestead if you live in the first floor or second floor. If you have a 3-family, you get 1/3 if you live in that 3-family. So we made it as fair as possible. So what we did this year, we had a massive recertification of the homestead, because we hadn't done that since I put the homestead in when I got elected in 2007. So we felt, and I was getting a lot of phone calls from parents and teachers, that there were a lot of children that were illegally enrolled in the school system.
A lot by meaning what?
Well, I couldn't give you a percent. My prediction was that probably maybe 8 to 10% out of 3,100 students, because
that's a lot.
It's a lot, but you have to understand one thing. You know, because we have a great school system, there's a downside. Everybody is clamoring to get in our school system. We've got great programs for special education students. We've got great programs. We just went into an all-day kindergarten program. So we've got some good programs. We've got good sports programs. So people want to come in. So basically, I was concerned about people who were getting the homestead, and then they were allowing people to, as I said, that bogus lease that I give my sister, who her name may be Smith, and she says, I got to get my children out of the school X. I live in city X. You got to help me out. So I write up a bogus lease. She goes to the school department, registers her 2 children, and now even if it's best for her to drive her children back and forth to drop the kids off, it's a win-win for obviously that person that illegally gives the homestead and illegally has their children in the school, but it's a lose-lose for the taxpayers. And quite frankly, Dan, the taxpayers have had it up to their eyeballs.
Are people who are doing this, with this example and other, I'm sure, means, I mean, you were even talking about it, if I follow the news coverage correctly, people using the hotels and motels for addresses. But are they using the transportation system as well?
No, because what happens, well, here's what happens too. We're looking at people that may be coming in with say 3 or 4 children in a vehicle. Bus comes, pulls up, drops the kids off, and you know, I've seen it myself. I've seen people where they've dropped off children. You see them get out of the vehicle. Now, some people say, well, maybe they're going to work, not with their pajamas on and their fuzzy slippers, and they'll head towards a different community. That's all I'll say, other than Johnston. And I've seen it with my own eyes. So, and I've gotten calls from teachers, of course, anonymously, because they don't, you know, they want to kind of stay under the radar, so to speak, as well as, you know, we've been acting on a lot of tips since this ordinance was introduced about 2 weeks ago. And we're following up on every tip. Some of the information came in was wrong, but we're following up on every tip.
Is there an extra penalty for fuzzy slippers?
Some of the sites were scary, but that's another story.
I understand what you're doing here. You feel like, look, it's expensive enough to run the school system. To have an 8 to 10% surge in pressure on the system doesn't seem fair. Well,
my statistics, I don't have statistics saying there's 8 to 10%, but you look at the complaints you get. Now, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping it's only 3 or 4%. Is this ordinance going to cure everybody? No, but it's going to get them. And you know, my father had a saying, God rest his soul, you can punch somebody in the nose and it hurts for a little while. But when you take money out of their pocket, every time they put their hand in the pocket, they say, ow. So we're looking at going after those people who have the homestead, who are abusing the homestead. And we're looking at ensuring that if you've got the homestead, it's owner occupied. Now, let me say this. If I've got the homestead and I live in a 2-family, there's not a problem with me renting out one of the units as long as I live in the home and children coming into the school system. That's not a problem. We're looking to go after I call them cheaters, tax cheats. They're stealing from the taxpayer.
the phony leases.
The phony leases.
The phony locations.
Correct.
Using what? Grandma's house but not living there?
Exactly.
Hotel, motel addresses?
Yeah, I mean, that issue, that came to fruition a couple of days ago, last week actually. And quite frankly, it got to the media, not because of me, because the parent called the media. What happened was I had gotten an anonymous tip in a letter form, and the person said that they felt it was, it was unfair that there were children living in a motel on Route 6 and they were going to the school system. So I asked one of my people who does investigations, my minimum housing person, to check out the anonymous tip. And when we did, he went up there with a witness, he went a police officer. He found out that there were 4 people living in one hotel room with a hot plate. Now, quite frankly, that violates, my building officials told me that violates the building codes and it violates our ordinances. These motels are not long-term stay. If it had a little kitchenette, a little area to rest, it'd be a different story. But you can't have people, it's a health and safety issue, living in a motel, enrolling in the school systems, plus they're circumventing the law. As I said, move into the town. It's a great town. We'd welcome you into town, as long as you legitimately enroll your children in the school system. Right. And I can't allow it anymore. And the taxpayers, as I said, they've had it.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the penalty and the argument against the mayor's thinking. Stay with us. Mayor Polisena from Johnston is here. So long story short, he feels like there could be anywhere from 8 to 10%, maybe less, but even if it's a few, you can't be doing this. You can't be coming into a school system, being a non-resident of a school system and trying to, finagle ways to suggest you can. Well, the ACLU stepped up. Here's a headline on an online story here. We have that, Kevin, right? After TV report, the ACLU questions the town on school residency rules. The ACLU is questioning the way you've gone about this business. You have a response to the ACLU.
Well, first of all, I work for the taxpayers of Johnston, not Steve Brown. And
at the ACLU.
And his letter that he sent me was loaded with inaccuracies, because he said that I removed the children from the school. I didn't. I removed the family, or we told them.
This is one specific family.
Right, this is what he was talking about, the people that were living in the motel. What happened was, I don't have the power to remove them from the school. The mayor is separate from the school department. The school committee and the school department run the schools. So once again, I think, and I've known Steve for a long time when I was a state senator, I think he's getting a little confused, because he was definitely confused and disoriented in his letter. And if I saw him, I'd tell him the same thing. Because there were so many inaccuracies. He was saying that I removed them from the school. I didn't remove them from the school. What we did was we enforced our zoning ordinance. You can't live in a motel for so many days.
So you stopped them from living in the motel?
Correct.
And did they leave the school?
As far as I knew, they were still in the school system. They're still enrolled in the school system. So, Steve, you got to get your facts straight before you make a fool out of yourself.
So they're still in the school, and you're suggesting that so you're not taking kids in tow saying, let's go.
No.
You're using financial and administrative mechanisms
Correct.
to force that behavior.
Correct.
So what is it that you're looking to do with the ordinance?
What this ordinance would do, let's say they catch Joe Polisena, who violates the ordinance, or violates the homestead. So what'll happen is, if I gave that bogus lease, and those children do not belong in the school system because they don't live in the town, what's going to happen is Joe Polisena is going to lose the homestead, and forever how long they're in the school system, Joe Polisena is going to pay for educating those children. whether it's regular education around 14,000.
Meaning you're going to bill the residents?
Absolutely, we're going to bill
for
them
the full tuition value?
Well, it depends how long they're in, Dan. If they're in, let's say from September to January, we're going to bill them for 6 months. And if they don't pay, there'll be a lien on their property. And it's totally legal. And I think it's going to stop the nonsense of people letting their family and friends register in our school system.
And the lien on the property would be tax sale type stuff?
Absolutely.
If they don't make good on the lien?
A person asked me, he says, so like, what are you going to do if I don't pay?
All right.
I said, very good question. I said, you ever ride in a cab? He said, what? Did you ever ride in a cab? He said, yeah. I said, when they put the handle down, the meter ticks, right? He said, yes, well, the meter's going to tick. I mean, I may be in St. Anne's Cemetery someday, but the town's going to get their money. And as I said, if they don't pay, we would look at putting the house up for a tax sale because they're stealing from their fellow taxpayers.
Is there another mechanism, or is that the exclusive mechanism?
No, that's the one. I told you.
That's the baby?
That's the one that hurts, you know, ow, when they put their hand in their pocket. And
what if you don't own a home and you can't be penalized via homestead? Is there another way that you can penalize?
Well, yeah, you would remove the students, but then we would actually go looking, because it's the homeowner's responsibility. If I'm renting my house out to say the York family, and the York family allows the Smith and Jones kids to register, then me as Polisena, the owner, I have a responsibility, because now it involves an issue where it's a single family house with multi people living in the house. So we'll get the taxpayers' money back.
Have you talked to the mayors about about whether they've got the same challenge?
I believe, from what I was told last week, North Providence had asked for a copy of this resignation. I'm sorry, resolution. I'm sorry.
Did we just break some news? You didn't just quit?
No, not yet. No, you can't get rid of me that easy. But North Providence is asking for the resolution, and I was told, I'm not sure, and I don't want to speak out of class, but I know that Smithfield has a couple of motels in their community, so they may be looking at it also. So all it is, as I said, it prevents people from, I say, stealing from the taxpayers.
Do you know where most of these folks are coming from? Do you have enough data to know?
I have an idea, but I'd rather not say.
Why?
Because I don't want to insult a particular community, because people say, well, they're leaving city or town X because the school system's bad.
Well, you're going to have to identify them eventually.
Oh, they
when
will.
Your data comes out.
Yeah, when that comes out, we'll put it out there. But I just don't want to. I don't want to be premature in saying it's coming from city or town X or Y. But it'll come out. I mean, I have an idea, a real good idea where they're coming from.
All right, well, I won't tell anybody. Yeah. What do you think it is?
City X and Y, or town X and Y. So.
Do you think it's more than one community?
No, I think it's probably one community. You know, there's been some.
So I'm guessing it's the city of Providence.
Well, there's been some rumors that there's been people coming in from other communities, also. So I'm not at this point ready to speculate and say.
So you should talk to Mayor Lorza about his problem. What do you think? Oh, he's in China.
Johnson has the problem.
When is this ordinance going to get passed?
It will get passed at the next council meeting. It was already read. The council members are on board with this 1,000%. I have to tell you, even my detractors have come to town hall to pay their taxes, and before they thumbed their nose at me, they shook my hand and say, this is a real good ordinance, and it's long overdue. So it really is long overdue, because once again, people are tired of being ripped off by people trying to either circumvent or beat the system.
But if you want to move in legally, come to Johnston.
You're more than welcome to enroll your children in our great school system. You just have to do it legally. You can't circumvent the system.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
One more thing. Yogi. Yankee fans, myself included, heavy heart today.
It isn't over till it's over.
We may be lost, but we're making good time.
When you come to a fork in the road, take it.
No earrings, no tattoos, no standing at home plate watching a ball. Just a great, unlikely superstar.
We'll miss him. What a great guy. Good night.